On the 11th of June 2020, a man was arrested buying groceries in a market in Port Vila, the capital of Vanuatu. He was 33, American, tanned, unhurried, in no apparent trouble. He had been using his real name. Within hours, he was on a private jet, a Gulfstream 5, climbing out over the Pacific, bound for Guam. His name was Inigo Philbrick, and according to the FBI, cited across the art press, he had just become the author of the largest art fraud in American history. More than $86 million. Every masterpiece has a past. A few of them had too many owners. How does a man like that end up shopping in the South Pacific? He believed the island had no extradition treaty with the United States. He was right. It made no difference. All it took was a removal order and a plane. But the real question runs underneath the whole story. How do you take $86 million from some of the most sophisticated buyers in the world by selling them paintings they were never allowed to fully own? Inigo August Philbrick was born in Hackney, London, on the 23rd of April, 1987, and grew up in Connecticut. His father, Harry Philbrick, directed the Aldrich Contemporary Art Museum. Art was the family trade. He studied at Goldsmiths in London, where he met Orlando Whitfield, a friend who would, years later, write the book about his fall. Then he walked into J. Jopling's White Cube Gallery as an intern. He did not stay an intern for long. He became head of secondary market sales. And in October 2011, with Jopling's money, he opened his own gallery in Mayfair. He was 24. The press called him a protégé. By his mid-20s, he was trading blue-chip names: Basquiat, Stingel, Wool, Kusama. Not new paintings from studios, but existing works, resold privately between collectors. It is among the quietest and least regulated corners of the art world. And Philbrick understood something about it that his clients did not. There is no public register of who owns a painting. None. When a picture changes hands in private, no authority records it, which means a dealer who is willing to lie can sell the very same painting more than once. The proof of the method was a single canvas, a photorealistic portrait of Pablo Picasso, painted not by Picasso, but by the artist Rudolf Stingel in 2012. In January 2016, Philbrick sold 50% of that painting to a collector named Alexander Pesco through a company called Sat Finance for $3.35 million. 1 month later, in February, he sold the same painting, the whole of it, 100%, to a Berlin art finance firm called Fine Art Partners for $7.1 million. Fine Art Partners was run by a couple, Daniel Tumpel, a former Morgan Stanley banker, and Loretta Würtenberger, a lawyer. Remember them. They believed they owned the Stingel outright. Pesco believed he owned half of it, and neither of them knew the other existed. Then Philbrick pledged that same painting a third time, as collateral for a loan. 50% sold, 100% sold, and put up as security on top. More than 150% of a single picture. He did the same with a Basquiat. In 2016, he told Pesco he was buying a 1982 work called Humidity for $18.4 million and produced a sales note to prove it. A note that was forged, carrying the name and the signature of a real executive at a real company. In truth, Philbrick bought the painting from Phillips for $12.5 million, using the $12.2 million that Pesco had handed him. Then he moved the Basquiat into an offshore company and pledged it too against a loan of nearly $14 million. Every masterpiece has a past, and on this channel we follow it wherever the money went. Subscribe and stay for the stories the auction houses would rather you forgot. The lender was a firm called Athena Art Finance. It had begun lending to Philbrick in January 2017, $10 million, raised to $13.5 million the following year, against works he had already sold to other people. For a while, the arithmetic held. As long as no two owners of the same painting ever met, and no one asked the auction house a single plain question, the machine kept turning. The thing that undid Inigo Philbrick was the thing that had made him: the Stingel. To keep fine art partners calm, he had shown them a document. In it, the auction house Christie's guaranteed that the painting would fetch $9 million at auction. It was a reassuring piece of paper. It was also entirely fake. In May 2019, the Stingel actually went to auction at Christie's. The hammer fell at $5.5 million, $6.52 million with fees. Well short of $9 million. And fine art partners began asking questions. They went to Christie's about the guarantee, and Christie's told them the truth. There was no guarantee. The house had never written it, never signed it. It had not even been Philbrick who consigned the painting. The paper was a ghost. And once one buyer pulled at the thread, the whole thing came apart. On the 4th of October 2019, Fine Art Partners sued Philbrick in Miami, demanding the return of $14 million in art and funds, among the works, a Yayoi Kusama mirror room. That December, Athena sued in New York for $14.9 million. Each lawsuit surfaced another buyer who believed the same paintings were his. Inigo Philbrick did not stay to answer. He closed his galleries in London and Miami, and he vanished. He ran through Australia, Japan, New Caledonia, and finally to Port Vila in Vanuatu with his partner, Victoria Baker Harbour, a star of the British program Made in Chelsea. On the island, he barely hid. He used his real name in the shops. Locals would later describe a man who did not seem to think anyone was coming for him. He was wrong. Which brings us back to the market and the jet and the 11th of June 2020. At the request of the American Embassy, a Vanuatu minister signed a removal order. Philbrick was driven straight to the airport and flown to Guam. 4 days later, on the 15th of June, he appeared by video before a court there, charged with wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. The first complaint spoke of more than $20 million. By the end, the figure would pass 86. That November, while he sat in custody, his daughter was born. On the 18th of November 2021, in a federal court in New York, Inigo Philbrick pleaded guilty to wire fraud. He said 8 words to the judge. "I did it for the money, Your Honor." On the 23rd of May 2022, the judge, Sidney Stein, sentenced him to 84 months, that is 7 years, in prison, with 2 years of supervised release, and ordered him to forfeit $86,672,790. His business partner, Robert Newland, later received 20 months. And then, the part that unsettles. He did not serve 7 years. He was released on the 31st of January 2024, after roughly 3.5 years in custody. The sources differ on exactly how long. One account calls it approximately 4 years. Either way, he came home. He married Victoria Baker Harbour. Orlando Whitfield's book about him was named a Book of the Year by the New York Times, the New Yorker, and The Economist. The BBC made a documentary. A former friend, the dealer Kenny Schachter, who says he lost more than $1.5 million to Philbrick, and who first branded him a mini Madoff, watched it all from the outside. And Inigo Philbrick sat down with Vanity Fair and said two things. The first, the art world is unregulated. The second, about his future. I'd like to get re-established as an art dealer. Remember the arithmetic. He sold more than 100% of paintings that were never fully his, in a market that keeps no register of who owns what, to buyers with more money than protection. He was caught not because the system found him, but because a buyer finally questioned the auction house. The market that Inigo Philbrick defrauded is still largely unregulated. The register that would have stopped him still does not exist. And the man who sold the same painting twice would like, now, to sell you another. Every masterpiece has a past. His had too many owners, and not one of them was safe. Next time on Provenance. A painting that fooled everyone who wanted to believe in it, and the forger who gave the experts exactly what they were hoping to find.